Gyrus and Ninja 2. The games for ColecoVision, and the music was awesome for ColecoVision, and the ColecoVision was just neat, and I would love to get my hands on a ColecoVision because that's a system I've never owned. I just know it through going over Rex's house and going. Todd had it too. Todd got it later on, so that was really neat. Yeah, then from Commodore 64 came Nintendo. Rex got Nintendo, and I'll never forget when he got Nintendo. What a no pun intended, what a game changer that was. I remember he got the Nintendo with Rob the Robot and the light gun. He got the whole package. And I remember Rob the Robot lasted like a week. I mean, you played Gyromite with Rob the Robot. It took like it took hours just to play that game because Rob the Robot was so slow. So Rob the Robot went out real quick. But then games like Super Mario and Contra and Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. I mean, I can remember basically living over Rex's house after he got his Nintendo. And I mean, we would put on, I mean, at the time, Bon Jovi, Slippery When Wet. I remember all the older kids were playing Bon Jovi, Slippery When Wet. So he had the tape, and we would listen to Dead or Alive over and over again, and play Metroid, or play Contra, or play Golgo 13, and or Cinderella, or listen to Cinderella while we played it, and or listen to Def Leppard. Me myself, I was more of an Iron Maiden guy growing up, but Rex used to have all the latest, like, you know, rock and stuff like that. So those are fond memories. Playing Metal Gear, not understanding Metal Gear, and I tell you what, there must have been this dynamic with a lot of guys out there, but I've never heard anybody talk about it. When I used to go over Rex's house and play video games, a lot of the games were one player. So I'd be the guy sitting there watching. It would be me and him. He would play, I would watch. And guess what? I had no problem with that. To me, video games were almost more interesting to sit there and watch and just imagine how this stuff was happening. Like, how does this work? And just seeing the graphics and just absorbing it was almost as exciting as playing it. Just to be around the machine and watching it was so exciting. I didn't necessarily have to play, and a lot of times I didn't play. I would sit there and watch, and that was enough. But sometimes there'd be two-player games like Contra or Jackal. I mean, we'd go at it for hours, and just play until the daylight came, just nonstop. And then Nintendo went a couple different directions. That's how I met my buddy Phil. It's interesting with video games how at least when I grew up, I was introduced to all the friends that I have now. My whole circle of friends I have now, I met through video games. And oh geez, let me backtrack a little bit. Before the Nintendo, or during the Nintendo, my buddy Steve had in his house an arcade machine called Great Guns. And for the time, for somebody to have an arcade machine in their home was like, it was a mind blower. It was a complete mind blower. I remember we would go over Steve's house. A crowd of kids would go over Steve's house. And right in his foyer, you'd walk into the door. And in the foyer, or I guess what you would call a mud room, there it was, Great Guns. And it was two rifles mounted on like a swivel. And you would shoot like, it would almost be like carnival style shooting. And you would shoot these, targets and whatnot. And I remember the machine being so loud, when you turned it on, it would be blaringly loud, like arcades could be, because they had tremendous sound. And you'd be lucky if you could get on one of those guns, because there were so many people there trying to play that game. So I figured that was interesting. Me and Steve, we have an arcade history. we used to go down to the pizza place and play Altered Beast and at the pizza place and Heavy Barrel. And next door at the stationery store, they had R-Type in the arcade. And we play... And R-Type, I didn't really understand R-Type. R-Type's one of my top 10 favorite games now. But I didn't get a Spaceship Shooters too much in the arcade. To me, the arcade was this where you'd see all the really graphically intense games. Like Altered Beast, when it came out, was like, oh, this is like real people walking around. But R-Type was like a spaceship shooter, so it didn't really get the majority of our quarters. And I think they had Gangsta Town in there, another like gun shooter game in the stationery store, which was okay. But Altered Beast, I mean, as a kid, you would take every quarter you had in your pocket and throw it in that machine. That was the great thing about being a kid. You could have a garbage bag full of quarters, and all you didn't think about saving it. You didn't think about spending it on anything, but dumping it. You would just sat there the whole day dumping those quarters in that machine. You know, just to hear, "Rise from your grave." So that, you know, and the arcade. What happened to arcades? It's something that I feel sad for kids nowadays. And when I have kids, they're not going to experience the excitement of the arcades. I can remember going to the mall with all my friends, and going to Time Out, and going to Galaxy in the Sunrise Mall. Time Out was downstairs and Galaxy was upstairs, and just seeing generation after generation of video games coming out from you know, very simple and basic games up to when Mortal Kombat. I can remember walking through the door and first seeing Mortal Kombat and the crowd of people around it, or first seeing Street Fighter 2 and the crowd of people around it, or first seeing Tekken, you know, this 3D fighting game, and the crowd of people around it, and the vibe inside the arcade. Very exciting, very exciting. I really miss arcades. I think it's something I hope comes back. Maybe does like you know, swings around, maybe like fashion, and arcades become popular again, because that was a really interesting social atmosphere for kids. I mean, you could really earn a lot of respect in an arcade on one quarter if you were a kid. But listen, let me check it. I got to check the time on this camera, because I have a feeling we're gonna have to break this into a couple parts. So we're stopping at Nintendo for now. So let me sneak back over here and we'll restart the camera. Okay. Yeah. So Nintendo introduced me to a lot of my friends. The original Nintendo. You know, I met my buddy Phil, and we did a paper route together, and we basically, you know, we just lived to play, you know, Nintendo. And Phil was the first guy. I remember when I met Phil, he was the first guy whose mother had a membership to Castle Video, and Phil had access to her membership number. And Phil was the first guy I ever met that rented Nintendo games. And I remember going over Phil's house, because every couple days he was renting new games. And to me that was like incredible, because, you know, as a kid you had to save up money to buy video games, and money was nowhere to be found. I mean, maybe on your birthday you could scrounge enough, you couldn't even scrounge up enough money to buy a Nintendo game at $40, $45 a pop. I remember Phil was renting these games. He'd have a new game every, you know, a couple new games every week. This was mind-blowing. So me and him joined forces on a paper route, and from there, you know, we were able to buy games here and there. And then I met my buddy Frank, and going over Frank's house, he had a Sega Master System. And I remember he only had like 4 games for it. Astro Warriors, Hang On. He had Gangsta Town with the light gun, and Double Dragon, and we used to play endlessly. And I remember we were playing Astro Warriors one time, and he was hogging the game, and he wouldn't let me play. He wouldn't give me the controller. We were supposed to be taking turns, but he kept on playing, and I said, Frank, give me the controller. And he just like laughed and keep playing and whatnot. I'm like, Frank, give me the controller. And he was like, whatever. And finally I yelled out, I said, Frank, give me the fucking controller. And little did I know, his father was home. And his father came upstairs. And he opened up the door and he goes, you have to leave and you don't come back here until you can speak like a gentleman. And I remember being completely mortified and walking out of there and not coming back for a couple of months, because you know parents can put a scare into you as a kid. So I remember I didn't go back to Frank. I was like, I'd always be like, hey Frank, your father home? He'd be like, Frank would be like, yeah, come over, when you come over. I'd be like, is your father home? He'd be like, oh come on, he doesn't care. But anyway, you get spooked as a kid. So and that was really embarrassed, because I was never that type of kid. I was never a lippy kid or a mouthy kid like that. I was always very respectful. So yeah, I got my first taste of Sega Master System, and believe it or not, my last taste. So I'd like to get a Sega Master System, because that's a game system I've never owned, and the only experience I've ever had with it is with a couple of games. And from what I understand, they have the original Phantasy Star for it, which is Phantasy Star 2 is in my top 10 game list, and I'd never played the original, so I'd be crazy excited to play that. Then from there, I can remember going to the video game rental store with my buddy Phil, and Sega Genesis games started to hit your shelf. And I remember picking up boxes like Sword of Sedan, Sonic the Hedgehog, and looking at the back of the boxes and being like, oh my God, what was it, Evander Holyfield's Boxing? All these games were coming out, and the graphics were like, whoa, this is outrageous. This is the next thing, man. This is 16-bit. Everybody was talking 16-bit. So basically, this is around the time where I begged for Nintendo, and I finally got Nintendo. And sure enough, as soon as I get Nintendo, these 16-bit systems start coming out. So now I can't ask my parents for the 16-bit systems, because I finally got Nintendo. So my luck again, as soon as I get Nintendo, new 16-bit systems start coming in. And this leads me to going back to my buddy Rex, who was the first one to get TurboGrafx 16. Now, if I'm going to establish myself as a video game guy, if you're a video game guy, everybody has their system. Some people are Nintendo guys, some people are Sega guys. I'm a TurboGrafx 16 guy. Okay? For me, and I'm not going to argue with you guys about this. I mean, you like something else, that's fine. We're talking about me here. TurboGrafx, for me, greatest gaming system ever made. And that's a lot to say. I understand that's a lot to say. But for me, I fell in love with TurboGrafx. Now, Rex got the TurboGrafx 16. I remember he got it with Bloody Wolf and Bonk's Adventure. And, wow, this was wild stuff, man. I mean, wild stuff. The speed of it, the graphics, the colors, the little game cards were like credit cards. The system looked cool. It was small. It was light. This is like revolutionary graphics. I mean, this thing was cooking. That was where it was at for me. And I remember Rex got it first, and a while after that, I begged my parents. I remember one birthday went by. Oh no, one Christmas went by. No TurboGrafx. Then finally, on my birthday, I remember a week before my birthday, something like that. My parents went out to the ground round, and they were asking me what I want for my birthday. And this is where timing is everything when you're a kid. You never wait for your father to walk in from work and say, "Hey, Dad, can I get this such and such a gaming system?" And he looks at you and rolls your eyes and like, "Yeah, get me a beer out of the fridge."